Really hoping that that works. Okay. All right, so I already kind of provided a little bit of an introduction to who I am, but just in case um, there are people that are going to be joining us who don't know me, I am a registered dietitian and I'm also the bariatric surgery program coordinator. I work up here with Dr. Pennings, Dr. Richardson, and Dr. Dirks. And I've been here for almost 6 years now. So I started in 2017, and over the 6 years, we've been able to, I've been able to really kind of hone in my skills on weight management. That's kind of my primary specialty. I am a certified specialist in obesity and weight management. And then I'm also a current student at Creighton University. I'm getting a master's of science in integrative health and wellness with a concentration on lifestyle medicine and health coaching. And then just kind of some fun facts about me. Hobbies are really active things. I love running and golfing, paddleboarding, skiing, hiking. I did just run Bloomsday a couple days ago, and I'm still sore from that 7.5 miles. Definitely did not train properly for that, but just in case anyone else is feeling my pain with Bloomsday. All right, so just some objectives of what you should expect to kind of glean from this presentation. We're going to go over some weight loss strategies. There are a lot of weight loss strategies out there. There are many things that people can do to experience weight loss. And so we're going to go over a lot of those strategies. We're also going to go over some nutrition 101 information. I think that in order to know and understand weight loss, you kind of have to know a little bit about nutrition as well. We're also going to go over various factors that contribute to your weight status, both lifestyle factors and environmental factors. And I really like to make sure that individuals understand that this webinar is not going to encourage any specific fad diets or one way of eating. I think that there is a variety of ways that people can eat to have a healthy diet that promotes weight loss. And it's definitely not going to tell you to cut out entire food groups or macronutrients either. And so if that's the kind of guidance you're looking for, this is not the right webinar for you. And so just to provide kind of an overview of weight loss. So weight loss is something that I feel like I can talk about for hours. So I'm going to try to provide as much information in kind of this small amount of time. And so really, despite what various companies, all the different weight loss programs out there, every single one of them tells individuals, oh, we are the best program, or we have the right cocktail of things that's going to make you burn fat and lose weight. And despite what all of those companies say and tell you, the fundamental foundation of weight loss is creating a calorie deficit. And so you have to create this calorie deficit in order to experience weight loss. Now, to kind of give a little bit more information about that, I really like it when individuals have the understanding that weight gain is not going to be caused by eating specific foods or food groups, unless those foods or food groups are causing you to eat too many calories. So a really good example of that is that carbohydrates kind of get a bad reputation in the weight loss world. And carbohydrates are not going to cause you to gain weight unless the carbohydrates that you're choosing are, deep fried potatoes that you're having for every meal and you're eating all day, every day, and it's causing you to consume a lot of calories. And so weight gain is not going to be caused by eating specific foods or food groups unless those foods are causing you to consume too many calories. And then on the opposite side of that, weight loss is not going to be caused by eating specific foods or food groups unless those foods are helping you consume less calories during the day. So a good example of that would be like fruits and vegetables, where fruits and vegetables are naturally low in calories, they're high in fiber, so they really help promote feelings of fullness and satisfaction. And so eating more of those types of foods can help you follow a low-calorie diet and experience weight loss. And then it's also important to keep in mind that weight loss or weight gain is going to happen based on what you practice consistently. And so Unfortunately, it's not, just one good healthy meal that's going to help you lose weight. It's also not one unhealthy meal that's going to make you gain weight or prevent you from losing weight. It is what you do consistently on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, that's going to help you meet your goals or cause you or prevent you from meeting your goals. So I promised you all that we were going to go over some nutrition 101 information. And so I brought up the term and the topic of calories. And since we understand that calories are so important when experiencing weight loss or experiencing weight gain, a lot of individuals have the question of, well, how many calories do I need? And it's hard to provide that answer in a group setting like this because everyone's calorie needs is very different. Calorie needs are dependent on a lot of factors, including your age. We know that as individuals get older, they do not need as many calories. That's why a lot of individuals experience weight gain as they continue to move through the life cycle. We also know that gender plays a role. Unfortunately for women, men just need a little bit more calories than women do typically. Depends on height. Individuals who are taller need more calories than individuals who are shorter. Obviously, activity levels. And so individuals that are really active, they need more fuel, they need more calories than individuals who are more sedentary. And so, calorie needs are dependent on a lot of factors. So it's hard for me to provide individuals with just kind of a blanket statement of this is how many calories that you should aim for. Towards the end of the PowerPoint, I do have some additional kind of recommendations of maybe where to start if you're thinking about tracking calories during the day, but we'll eventually get to that. I do think a more realistic way of kind of starting is just figuring out how many calories you're currently consuming. And so figuring out kind of what your baseline is as far as, how many calories you're consuming on a daily basis, and then subtracting maybe about 300 to 500 calories in order to create that calorie deficit and begin to experience weight loss. And so when I'm talking about calories, it's important to realize where calories come from. Calories come from our three macronutrients: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And so it's important to realize that because especially when you're going down a route of weight loss and maybe you're trying to decrease a certain macronutrient. So like I said, carbohydrates tend to be that macronutrient that people want to decrease when they're experiencing weight loss. That means that you are going to be increasing your protein and your fat consumption because your calories have to come from somewhere. And so if you're decreasing one macronutrient, that means you're going to be increasing the other macronutrients. And so I've broken it down here into each macronutrient. We have kind of estimated or recommended intakes for each macronutrient. I started off with carbohydrates. A lot of people are really shocked and surprised to hear that carbohydrates really should be about 40 to 50% of your calorie intake during the day. And so, and even 40% is considered kind of on the lower end of carbohydrates. And then you have protein. Protein, I tend to recommend about 20 to 30% of calories from protein. And that's actually considered a higher protein diet. A moderate protein diet would be about 15% of calories coming from protein. And so 20 to 30% is considered a little bit of a higher protein diet. And I'll talk a little bit more about why I recommend having that little bit boost in protein intake. And then fat, same thing, about maybe around 20 to 30% of your calorie intake from fat. And so I provided additional information about how many calories per gram each of these macronutrients are. That can be helpful if you're wanting to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of, calculating how many calories are coming from each of these macronutrients for your own diet. I'll do an example, for instance, if you're having about, 150 grams of carbohydrates per day, which to a lot of people sounds like a massive amount of carbohydrates, but actually that's pretty modest amount of carbohydrates, 150 grams throughout the day. So if you're doing 150 grams and you're timing that by 4 because it's 4 calories per 1 gram, it's going to be about 600 calories total. And then if you're doing about 1,500 calories per day, that equals about 40% of your calories from carbohydrates. And so you don't have to do all of those, calculations. I just like to provide the information in case you're curious and in case you're going down that route of counting macronutrients. I am doing another one of these webinars in a couple of weeks, maybe about 4 weeks from now. But I'm going to be doing it all about macronutrients, micronutrients, and phytonutrients. And so we'll get into a lot more detail about macros specifically. And then at the bottom here, unfortunately, alcohol also has calories in it. And so we know that alcohol has about 7 calories per 1 gram. And so, like I said, you have to think about your calories have to come from somewhere. And so having that balance of macronutrients can be helpful. You don't have to calculate them, though. What you can focus more on is kind of balancing your meals appropriately to balance those macronutrients out, which we'll talk about. I really like this graphic here because it really shows you that, every food group is going to have a variety of different macronutrients in it. So for example, you may or may not know that every single food we consume has some sort of protein in it. However, an apple is going to have maybe about 1 gram of protein as opposed to beef and chicken that has maybe 20 to 30 grams of protein. Now, this graphic shows that, things like beans and legumes are going to be a good source of carbs, but also a good source of protein. And then things like dairy, eggs, fish are going to be a good source of fats and also a good source of protein as well. So you'll notice that, each food has kind of a collection of different macronutrients in them. So I talked a little bit about how I prefer individuals who are losing weight to experience a little bit more of a higher protein diet. And this is the reason why. They've done some research on high protein diets and how it relates to weight loss. They've been able to find that high protein diets have been shown to decrease body weight, decrease fat mass, and preserve fat-free mass or your muscle mass. And we know that if we have more preservation of muscle mass, it's going to equate to more calories that are naturally burned throughout the day because it takes more calories to preserve muscle than it does to preserve fat. And so individuals that hang on to that muscle mass need a little bit more calories than individuals who have a little bit more, fat mass. Higher protein diet can also prevent weight regain after weight is lost. And then we also know that there's some alterations in gut hormones going on with higher protein diets. So we know that it increases the gut hormones that promote feelings of satiety or fullness, decreases gut hormones that promote feelings of hunger. And so kind of the overall mechanisms of how this high protein diet works is preserving that muscle mass. We also see a higher diet-induced thermogenesis. So if that's the first time you're hearing that term, diet-induced thermogenesis, basically what that means is whenever we consume food, it creates heat in order for our bodies to digest and break down that food, which increases your metabolism. And so we are finding that protein kind of boosts that metabolism a little bit more than that fat and that carbohydrate. And so that's another way that high protein diet can help with weight loss. And then we also see changes in gut hormones, which I already talked about. Now, it's really important to understand what a high protein diet is. I'm not telling you to go out and start eating 150, 200 grams of protein a day. That's too much. And anything that you consume that your body isn't utilizing, it's just going to be excreted through your urine. And so consuming about 20 to 35% of calories from protein would be considered a high protein diet. And so let's kind of use that 1,500 calorie per day example again. We take 1,500 calories and times it by, let's say, 0.2. And then divide by 4 because there's 4 calories in a gram. That's 75 grams of protein. So 75 grams of protein is considered a high protein content if you're consuming 1,500 calories per day. So it's not, a ton of protein that you need in order to experience these benefits. Now, there are some limitations of this study and the recommendations. I always think it's good to go over limitations of all these different studies that are coming out. It wasn't only a 12-month study, and so it was not a long-term study. And there's also some concerns with long-term bone health and kidney function for individuals that follow this high protein diet. All right, so we've talked about creating this calorie deficit. And so you might be wondering, how the heck do I do that? Well, there's a lot of ways at how you can create a calorie deficit, and everyone is going to have, a different strategy that's relevant to their own eating patterns and their own lifestyle. You can create a calorie deficit by eating smaller portions. You can eat more low calorie foods. You can eat less high calorie foods. You can eat less often. You can also eat more often. Now, a lot of people are confused when I say eating more often to create a calorie deficit. And what I'm talking about in that, what I say that is that sometimes, especially when we're busy at work, it's so easy to go all day long where you're not eating anything. And then the second that you go home and you can finally take a breath, you realize you're starving because you haven't eaten all day. So then you just start eating, all day long, and you actually end up consuming more calories because you didn't eat as often as you should have during the day. And so you can eat more often in order to consume less calories. You can also burn more calories through exercise. You can drink calorie-free beverages rather than, beverages that contain a large amount of calories. When you can eat when you're hungry, you cannot eat when you're not hungry, which is really challenging for individuals sometimes, especially to differentiate being able to identify when you're feeling hungry versus when you're not feeling hungry. And just being present too, being able to practice mindful eating, slowing down, actually eating food, chewing it appropriately, and just being aware can also decrease your calorie intake. We'll talk more about that as well. You also should think about the calorie density of foods as well. And so I have some examples here of two different meals. And so, the meal on the left here is a cheeseburger and French fries and, 4-ounce burger with one slice of cheese, bun, and a side of fries. I calculated to be at about 882 calories. I'd say it's probably on the lower side too. I mean, we all see those meals at fast food restaurants and other restaurants that are 1,000, 1,200 calories per day. And so just thinking about the calorie content of certain foods can be helpful. And then you can compare this to the meal on the right here, where you have 4 ounces of chicken and then 2.5 cups of vegetables. And it's significantly lower in calories. And I'll tell you that this meal is going to probably leave you feeling a lot more sustained. It's going to not make you feel sluggish. It's also going to, keep you fuller. It's going to be more nutrient dense, and it's going to be higher in protein as well, because we know that chicken has a little bit more protein than beef does. Now, also thinking about the calorie density of foods, you have to think about the fact that foods higher in fat are going to be higher in calories, because remember we talked about how there's about 9 calories per 1 gram of fat as compared to 4 calories in 1 gram of fat or 1 gram of carbohydrates or protein. So fat is definitely our highest, our higher calorie macronutrient. And so that's why things like fatty meats, fried foods, full fat dairy, and butter can be really high in calories. And so you want to watch portion sizes of those foods. However, this is also applicable to foods like nuts and fish, oils, avocados, all of those good healthy foods that are full of healthy fats. They're still high in calories. I have a lot of patients who will, be so confused because they're snacking, they're including healthy snacks during the day. They're just grabbing handfuls of nuts throughout the day. Well, that can equate to, in the long run, a cup of nuts, and a cup of nuts has, close to 1,000 calories in it. So you'll begin to understand that these things can really just add up, especially, even if they're these healthy fat foods. And so that's, same thing with fish, oils, avocados. You just want to make sure you're watching the portion sizes of these foods when you're watching your calorie intake. So maladaptive eating behaviors, I get this a lot where, patients are saying, I don't eat anything throughout the day. How the heck can I be gaining weight? Well, there's 2 ways to maintain your metabolism: physical activity and exercise, and consistent meals and snacks throughout the day, because you have to be fueling your fire, fueling your metabolism throughout the day. And so, other considerations of these maladaptive eating behaviors is when you haven't eaten all day long, what's going to sound better? A nice healthy portion of salmon and veggies and brown rice, or like a bacon cheeseburger and French fries. I will tell you, if I haven't eaten all day, I'm going for the bacon cheeseburger and French fries. And so really being able to understand that having these consistent eating patterns during the day can help support you and set you up for success for choosing healthier options, but also fueling your metabolism and fueling your fire during the day. Now, what about intermittent fasting, right? Intermittent fasting is definitely, I feel like it was a little bit more trendy maybe a couple years ago, but I do still have people who will come in practicing intermittent fasting. And so research does support intermittent fasting as a modality for weight loss. You can't deny the research that's out there that shows that intermittent fasting helps individuals lose weight. However, how realistic is it to maintain long term? I always tell people that, whenever you're making behavior changes, whenever you're making diet changes, activity changes, you need to be thinking about, how realistic is it for you to maintain these things long term? Because the second you stop doing these things is the second that you're going to be at risk for weight regain. And so that's when individuals get into the cyclic behavior of losing a lot of weight and then regaining it, is because they're trying to follow these really intense, diet rules or diet programs that maybe aren't realistic to follow long term. Now, what I usually recommend is kind of a mild intermittent fasting technique with patients and clients. And so I usually recommend food consumption between, an 8 to 12-hour window. I do think that it's beneficial for individuals to kind of take a time period during the day, make sure you have your, breakfast and snacks and lunch and dinner, spaced out throughout that time period, and then stopping after dinner. I think that nighttime eating can be kind of a difficult thing to manage when you're trying to follow a low calorie diet. And so, I say 8 to 12-hour window because, again, you have to think about what's realistic for people. And so sometimes it's not realistic for people to only eat for 8 hours or 10 hours during the day because of work schedules, kids' schedules. And so you have to think about whatever is going to be most realistic. I feel like a lot of people kind of choose the 10-hour window. That seems to be most realistic for people, but this can be a good kind of technique to follow when you're trying to think about these consistent meals and snacks throughout the day. So we can't talk about weight loss without talking about emotional eating. I find that emotional eating is extremely prevalent with individuals who are trying to lose weight. Emotional eating is eating as a way to suppress or soothe negative emotions such as stress, anger, fear, boredom, sadness, loneliness. Major life events, or more commonly, the hassles of daily life, can trigger negative emotions that lead to emotional eating. Like I said, I find that this is very prevalent, that people, tend to turn to food for comfort. It can be very mindless. I find the majority of the time it is very mindless. Individuals don't even know that they're doing it. They're just grabbing things when they see it in order to experience that comfort. But it also can be really normal. It's normal to find comfort in food. Food is meant to be comforting. It's meant to be enjoyable. Um, However, it only becomes abnormal when your primary and consistent coping mechanism involves food. And so you don't have any other coping mechanism besides turning to food. That's when you can get into a difficult situation. And so, you want to really avoid the vicious guilt cycle. Sometimes, even I've done it before. I've turned to food for comfort when I've been stressed out. And it's okay to just be like, I'm using food right now to cope with my stress, and then moving on and not kind of feeling too guilty about it. However, starting to practice other coping mechanisms can also be extremely helpful. My colleague Megan Niels is going to be doing a webinar in 2 weeks that's all about stress and weight gain. And so I'm sure she's a licensed therapist and counselor. So she'll absolutely be talking about coping mechanisms and emotional eating. But so it's just good to think about other coping mechanisms that you can begin to practice. And so here are ones that just kind of came to my head: journaling, phoning a friend, going for a walk, listening to music, cleaning, playing with pets, or even just any hobbies, just getting out there and doing whatever you feel is going to calm you. I actually ran into a patient the other day who really enjoyed painting, and she had all of these amazing paintings that she created while she was trying to develop a new coping mechanism. There's also things like those adult coloring books, which kind of seem, a little bit, people are always kind of like a coloring book for an adult, but it can be just very soothing for the mind to do those little tasks and really kind of help with people's anxieties. And so being able to practice a different coping mechanism and not automatically turning to food is definitely a necessity if you're experiencing emotional eating. Now, we can't talk about emotional eating or maladaptive eating behaviors without talking about mindful and intuitive eating. And so intuitive eating, that I have the most recent edition of this book on this slide. I have an old edition though, Intuitive Eating. It's written by two dietitians. They've done a ton of research about intuitive eating and how impactful it can be. Intuitive eating is basically all about, eating when you're hungry, not eating when you're not hungry, not turning to emotional eating, rejecting the diet mentality, and really being able to listen to your body. This is a great book for any individual that is on a weight loss program. I highly recommend it. I reference it all the time. You can see I need to get probably the newer version because mine's kind of beat up a little bit. But intuitive eating can be very helpful. Mindful and intuitive eating kind of go hand in hand. Mindful eating focuses on your eating experiences, body-related sensations, and thoughts and feelings about food with heightened awareness and without judgment. So really being able to, again, slow down, be aware, chew your foods up thoroughly, and enjoy your foods. I have had so many patients over the years, just practice mindful eating. And when they actually start to be aware and they're not in this autopilot mode when they're eating, they start to realize that, oh, I was eating these foods and I actually don't enjoy them at all. They don't taste good to me. And so just being able to slow down and be aware, it can be very, very helpful. And sometimes that can be enough to experience the calorie deficit that you need in order to experience weight loss. Now, internal hunger and fullness cues, very important to start practicing reading those. Do you know what biological hunger feels like? And do you know what biological fullness feels like? They're doing a lot of research into childhood feeding to figure out when we are losing the ability to read our internal hunger and fullness cues. It used to be thought that children were losing that, they were losing that ability at the age of 5. Now they're thinking that it's more around the age of 3 that children are losing the ability to read their internal hunger and fullness cues. And so being able to practice maybe using something like the hunger scale can be helpful. And so I use this all the time with people where, I will ask them, what does a 1 feel like to you versus a 10? You'll notice that on the hunger scale, a 1 is on the starving side, feeling dizzy, feeling weak. And then a 10 is feeling so full that you're going to be sick. Obviously, you want to avoid both ends of these. I would even say avoiding a 2, avoiding a 9. Sticking probably between a 3 is the lowest you should go, and then probably a 7 is the highest that you should go. But so sticking between a 3 and a 7. And so not getting too hungry and then not getting too full. Now, it's also important to realize kind of the function or the purpose of snacks and meals. And so, for example, if it's 10 a.m. and you're feeling pretty hungry, maybe you're at a 3, and you know that in a couple hours you're going to be having lunch, maybe it's okay for you to just eat a snack until you get to a 5. Now, when you're having lunch and you know that maybe you're not going to be able to get that snack in the afternoon, you have to wait till dinner. Maybe you're at a 3 going into your lunch, but maybe it's okay to go to a 6 or maybe a 7 for your lunch or after you eat lunch. And so it's just really good to kind of immerse yourself into this. And it seems like a lot of work at first for individuals when they're kind of starting to read what each of these numbers feels like to them. However, it eventually comes to the point where they understand and they know what it all feels like to them, and they don't have to put as much effort into it. Um, I will have people print off the hunger scale and stick it on their, refrigerator to remind them to check in with their internal hunger fullness cues before eating. We know that emotional eating can cause individuals to feel like they're hungry when maybe they're not experiencing a biological hunger. We also know that when individuals are thirsty, they can mistake the thirst for hunger. And so, again, just being able to sit down and be aware and thinking about, are you biologically hungry? And then while you're eating, thinking about, am I biologically full? Am I biologically satisfied? Do I need to stop eating, or do I need a little bit more food? So it's also important to, you know, it's important to eat not only for weight loss. And so when you're setting your goals, when you're establishing eating patterns, having a low calorie diet that will promote weight loss is not the only factor that you should be considering. You should also consider, your fiber content, vitamin and mineral content of the foods you're consuming, your antioxidant content, disease preventing properties, and cancer preventing properties of the foods you're consuming. And also, of course, you're probably thinking I'm saying the word realistic way too many times, but how realistic is it to maintain long term? And a really good example of this is the ketogenic diet. I have to kind of preface this with I do not like the ketogenic diet. I think the ketogenic diet is very difficult to maintain long term. I think it has way too much saturated fat in it, not enough fruits, vegetables, whole grains, fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. I think it really lacks those things. And I think that there's not enough long-term studies to support somebody eating so much dietary fat in their diet. And so anyways, just kind of thinking about the full picture of the foods that you're choosing and your eating patterns during the day is really important, for your long-term health and wellness. All right, you also have to consider environmental factors. Um, I will, go to the ends of the earth and have arguments with people over the fact that weight loss is not just a matter of eating less, exercising more. There are so many environmental factors that play a role in our food environment, and it makes it very difficult to lose weight. We know that we live in an obesogenic environment, and so in our society, it's easy, convenient, and cheaper to eat unhealthy and not be physically active, unfortunately. You have to think about the fact that there's fast food restaurants on every corner. The highest subsidized crops in the United States are corn, wheat, and soy, which are mostly used for things like high fructose corn syrup and other preservatives in highly processed foods. Advertisements across all media focus on large food corporations that produce these unhealthy and highly processed foods. And things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, they don't get advertisements on the TV or on billboards. And grocery stores make it challenging to buy healthy foods too. Healthy foods can be more expensive, and then also they have specific strategies to try to get you to buy more of these products. You have to think about dairy and eggs, right? Dairy and eggs are the two things that people just run to the store really quick to get. And they're never conveniently in the front of the store. They're all the way in the back corner. And they do that for a reason, so that you have to navigate through the aisles to get to what you came there for. So that you're being exposed to all of the food brands, all of the corporations, and all of these foods to try to get you to buy these types of products. Also, high sugar, high fat, and highly processed foods are literally scientifically made to taste better so that you buy it more often. And it's also really easy to be sedentary in our society. And so overall, it is really challenging to have a healthy diet in the society that we live in. And so in order to have a healthy diet and an active lifestyle, you have to seek it out and you have to create your own environment that supports these behaviors. Now you can create that environment, by having a healthy environment at work, or at least contributing towards a healthier environment at work. You can do that at home by getting, your family on board with having a healthy food environment at home. And this leads me to the next slide, which do our friends make us gain weight? I used to do this years ago. I used to do this talk called Do Our Friends Make Us Fat? And I don't really like using the word fat anymore. So I changed that to do our friends make us gain weight? And the bottom line is that weight loss efforts are highly influenced by the people that you're surrounded by. And so friends, family, coworkers can absolutely encourage unhealthy eating unhealthy eating patterns and sedentary behavior. And then the research shows that individuals are 57% more likely to have obesity if a close friend has obesity, 40% higher risk if a sibling has obesity, and 37% higher risk if a spouse has obesity. And so having a support system when changing behaviors is necessary. When individuals do not have any support from family, friends, coworkers, or even just healthcare providers like therapists, I try to be very frank with them that it's going to be even more challenging. You're going to have more barriers in place. There is a book out there, it's called Thinfluence. I have to say that I have never read it, but I've heard a lot about it, that it talks all about kind of those influences that, that impact your weight status, individuals' ability to gain weight, lose weight, all of that. So anyways, there's just a lot of things you have to think about when you're thinking about the environment that we live in and having to change behaviors and try to eat healthy and be more active. There's a lot of different behaviors or things to think about. I think that ways that, you can kind of influence that environment as well as, being that healthy influence on your own friends. One thing that I've been trying to do with me and my girlfriends is I've been trying to, suggest healthy or not healthy, active activities that we can go do. So rather than going to dinner and getting drinks, I'm asking if they want to go for a hike or do you want to go for a walk or, and so kind of being the one to suggest those things can also be helpful for you impacting your own environment. So my colleague Casey Richardson, she's going to be doing a talk in a few weeks on exercise and creating those behaviors. But I couldn't do a weight loss talk without talking at least a little bit about exercise. And so when starting to be more active, the first two questions that you should ask yourself is, what is realistic for me to begin doing? And what activity or exercises will I enjoy doing? Because if it's not realistic for you to do, and if you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to continue doing it lifelong. The current recommendations for weight loss is for individuals to participate in 150 minutes weekly of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes weekly of vigorous exercise. What's also recommended is 2 days of weightlifting or resistance training and trying to limit that sedentary behavior. And I also included my favorite quote about exercise on this slide. It says, if exercise could be purchased in a pill, it would be the single most widely prescribed and beneficial medicine in the nation. And I like that quote because it just gives you a lot more perspective that exercise isn't just good for weight loss. It's good for so many things. And so, it's so good for your health from a lot of different angles. And so whenever you're starting to be more active, being able to see it from that perspective, that you're not just doing it for weight loss, you're doing it for longevity, to maintain your independent mobility as you age. All of those things are important pieces. I also wanted to say that, you have to enjoy your diet and enjoy your lifestyle. If you're not enjoying it, then, you're not going to continue doing it for very long. And so, it's really challenging, when people are coming in and they're wanting to lose weight, but they absolutely hate things like fruits and vegetables, and I try to be very honest with patients that it's just going to be a little bit more challenging if you don't enjoy those healthy foods, that are going to be supportive of weight loss. And so I hope that everyone can get to a point where they're enjoying their eating patterns and enjoying their lifestyle, and it doesn't feel so much like a chore. Being able to enjoy the process rather than just the end product is going to help make sure that you're staying on track and not feeling so burnt out on everything. All right, so I've talked a lot about a lot of different factors to think about when you're on a weight loss regimen. And so kind of the whole point of this webinar is to talk about where to start. Well, I do not believe where to start is being on a specific diet, meal plan, very low calorie diet, meal delivery services, liquid diets, or restricting carbohydrates or ketosis. Again, you have to think about what can I do now that's going to be easy for me to maintain throughout my life. Because if you are, let's say, utilizing something like Jenny Craig, which Jenny Craig is great, can help you experience weight loss. But the second that you stopped at Jenny Craig, you're going to be at risk for weight regain because, you were utilizing a program that, maybe you couldn't keep up with, for the rest of your life. So where I would recommend that you start is assessing your current lifestyle. Utilize a calorie tracking app to see how many calories you're currently consuming. Subtract that 300 to 500 calories per day, to have that overall calorie goal. Now, people don't like that answer. Um, Usually, people are like, just tell me how many calories I should consume during the day. And so whenever people want that number, the general guideline that I provide, women, maybe starting at 1,400 to 1,500 calories per day, and see where that gets you. That may equate to weight loss. It may equate to weight maintenance. And so starting with about 1,400 to 1,500 makes it so that you're not following such a restriction that it feels unrealistic, but maybe provides a little bit of a restriction so you can see kind of how your weight responds. And then for men, 1,800 to 2,000 calories per day can be a good starting point. And then again, adjusting based on how your weight is trending as a result of that calorie intake. You should also think about how much activity you're getting throughout the day. How many steps are you getting? Are you participating in structured exercise? How many minutes or hours are you spending being sedentary? And so just having an overall assessment of your current lifestyle patterns so that you can create goals to start changing those lifestyle patterns. Is your food intake structured or chaotic? That is something that I see very, very often. I would say a majority of people who are coming to me for weight loss have very chaotic eating schedules. And that I think that obviously comes from, our chaotic work lives and just busy lifestyles in general. But if you can start having some planned meals and snacks and some structure to your eating, that will help you out a lot. And then asking yourself, do you eat when you're hungry? Do you stop when you're full? And recruit help. Like I said, having a support system is so important when you're starting any sort of weight loss regimen. We have these coaching services that are available during this challenge. Myself and Lindy are doing those. And then also, maybe you need to recruit a therapist or counselor. If you're really struggling with emotional eating patterns or past traumas that are, really shaping your current lifestyle, getting a therapist or counselor on board is probably absolutely needed and necessary. Get a dietitian on board. Get your friends, family, coworkers on board. I love to hear these little stories that I'm hearing about clinics, and people who are enrolled in the weight loss challenge. They're kind of, getting together and they're going for walks and they're, kind of supporting each other during this challenge. That's been fun for me to hear. All right, and then with all of that said, nobody likes to hear when I say, well, assess your own lifestyle and see where to go from there. So a lot of people like to have direction. And so where can I start? So I will give you somewhere to start. So this is what I usually recommend for individuals who are trying to lose weight is this kind of eating pattern. And, you have to take this and you have to make it and maybe make little tweaks to it based on what's realistic for you. So this is just kind of a starting plan. I usually recommend 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. Remember, during maybe that 10-hour window of your eating window. And so usually what I recommend for the 3 meals a day is trying to have half of your plate being some sort of non-starchy vegetables, quarter of your plate being some sort of carbohydrates. That could be starchy vegetables, but it can also be fruit. It could also be, whole grains, brown rice, quinoa, all of that. And then a quarter of your plate being some sort of high protein food. This is a really good, realistic guide you can follow for your meals to kind of balance out those macronutrients that we were talking about. Now, what about breakfast? Because everyone asks me, are you seriously asking me to eat vegetables for breakfast? And no, I won't make you eat vegetables for breakfast, but you can kind of adjust this based on, your breakfast, on what kind of breakfast you enjoy. If you like to mix, some eggs, which would be your protein food, with some vegetables and maybe some potatoes or something, that could be a good way to follow that. But you can also do like, yogurt with some fruit and a little bit of whole grain granola. So you can kind of adjust this based on what's going to be realistic for you. The nice thing about breakfast is that it can be a little bit higher in carbohydrates, but you're kind of using that energy throughout the day. And so it's okay if it's a little bit higher in carbs than your other meals during the day. Now I put optional, a little question mark next to optional, because I don't really consider snacks as being optional. I think they're very important. There are people that, are really solid with their 3 meals a day. They feel good with that, and that's great. However, if you're eating 3 meals a day and then you're still just getting really hungry at night, then maybe consider putting some snacks in there so that you're not feeling that intense hunger. Now, whenever you're doing a snack, like I said, I recommend about 1 to 2 a day. Just depends on how you're feeling and what you feel like you need. Protein with a produce. And so that's why, if I can, have a dime for every time I've said protein with a produce throughout my career, I've had a lot, or I would have a lot of dimes. But that's really important to balance out your snacks. And so not just having one food group when you're having a snack, really taking advantage of that eating occurrence and having that protein food with that fiber, the fibrous food. So like fruits and vegetables. I think that snacks can be a great opportunity to get fruits and vegetables. And so, for example, I have a lot of examples here. Apple and a string cheese. I mean, if you think about easy snacks, grab an apple, grab a string cheese, run out the door, you're good to go. Yogurt and berries, veggie sticks and hummus, veggie sticks and deli meat, fruit and peanut butter, nuts and fruits and vegetables. So again, you're pairing up that protein with that fruit or vegetable. The protein with the fiber mixed together is going to fill you up, keep you satisfied, make it so you're not getting super hungry in between meals. Again, like I said, having structured and intentional eating is very important. Avoiding chaotic and unplanned eating occurrences that can be especially difficult during the workday. And then meal planning and meal prepping can be really helpful as well. And so being able to plan out your meals, I even tell, patients, just write out your plan, get a whiteboard, put on the refrigerator, write out your plan for the week. Even if you're not following it 100% of the time, at least you have a plan. At least you have all the foods in the refrigerator that you need to follow that healthy diet. Maybe prepping your veggie sticks for your snacks for the week, so all of those things can be really helpful to make it easier to follow that structured and intentional eating. Now, there are a lot of apps out there that can kind of help you stay on track. So for tracking, the apps that I'm most familiar with, that I enjoy the most, Verytastic is a great app. Chronometer is also a really great one. Start Simple with MyPlate. It's kind of a different take on tracking. What you can do is you can track your fruit and vegetable consumption with that MyPlate app. And so you're not really tracking calories. I would say Verytastic and Chronometer are calorie counting apps. And so if that's what you're looking for, then those are great options. If you just have goals of trying to increase fruit and vegetable consumption, MyPlate is a good one, and also the Daily Dozen is a good one as well. The Daily Dozen, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, is based on the book How Not to Die. Kind of a dramatic title, but basically that book just goes over all of the research that's out there about all these different types of foods and the health benefits and how they're linked with longevity. And so it basically takes the dozen foods that all this research has been done on, and creates a checklist on, being able to check off which of those foods you've eaten that day. Strava and Runkeeper are the two apps that I utilize whenever I'm tracking like walks or runs or activity levels. And so it's kind of fun to, even if you're on a good walking regimen, it's kind of fun to track them because I always like to look back on my walks and my runs, and it makes me feel accomplished. And so feeling accomplished and identifying your successes can absolutely be very motivating when you're on a weight loss journey. MyFitnessPal and Lose It, I put these on here. I don't love these apps. I have some concerns about the accuracy of them. I think that they also are kind of more tailored towards like the diet mentality. And so a lot of people love them though. And so I included them here, but maybe exploring these apps before you turn to MyFitnessPal or lose it. And then offers different apps that offer plan, programs, or ideas. The Peloton app is a great app. Peloton doesn't just have their, fitness equipment. They also have an app. And last time I checked, I think it was $13 a month. And they have, all sorts of different types of exercise classes on there that you can do in your living room. They have weightlifting, they have cardio, they have yoga, meditation. They have all of these classes on there that are awesome. So whenever people are looking for a exercise regimen and they're wanting to maybe do something at home, the Peloton app is a great one. Sweat app is also another good one that does at-home workouts. Forks Meal Planner. This is kind of a plant-based meal planner, but they basically just have a lot of recipes on there. I utilize the Tasty app quite often. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Tasty, but basically you can get on their app and then you can search and filter for like healthy dinners or healthy lunches or meal prep lunches. And so I utilize the Tasty app on a weekly basis, absolutely, just to try to get ideas for meals and healthy meals. And then the All Trails app, if you're interested in getting into hiking, All Trails has a great app that has all the different hikes that are in your area. And you can even go on there and see the reviews that people have left for hikes so you can kind of get a good gauge as to how intense it is or how difficult it is, maybe when the snow is going to be melted on that trail. And so that could be a really great app as well if you're wanting to look into some hiking this summer. I know I definitely am. All right, goal setting. So you want to start with small, realistic goals, and you can always build on your goals. You want to define your goal as specific as possible. So instead of I'm going to walk at lunch, maybe trying to specify it even a little bit more. So I'm going to walk for 30 minutes during lunch 3 to 4 times a week to increase my physical activity and support my weight loss progress. So you're providing as many details as possible with the goal that you're setting. Instead of I'm going to eat healthier, define that more. So I'm going to include 3 to 4 servings of vegetables and 2 to 3 servings of fruit daily to eat healthier and decrease my calorie intake. So you're identifying what you want to accomplish, how often you're going to be doing it, and why you're doing it as well. And so if you're wanting to write some things down, if you have a pen and paper handy, I do encourage you to actually write down what specifically do you want to accomplish. And you can write down multiple things you want to accomplish, either during this challenge or maybe this year, or maybe what your ultimate goal is 5 years from now. And writing down how you're going to accomplish it. So you have your goal, but how are you going to get there? So you're creating an action step. You're creating a plan of how you're going to meet that overall goal. How often are you going to do that action step? And then why do you want to accomplish that? And then a big part is how are you going to measure your progress towards your goal? Things like self-monitoring can be incredibly helpful for accountability and just making sure that you're staying on track. And then to make sure that your motivation is staying intact, list the 3 benefits that you'd experience if you were successful with your goal. And so how is meeting this goal going to benefit you? How is it going to align with your overall values and your overall life goals? And then some helpful reminders. Really remind yourself that Rome wasn't built in a day. We are running a marathon, not a sprint, metaphorical marathon though. You have to think about that, all these things are not going to happen overnight. And so having a goal to completely change your eating patterns by tomorrow is not realistic. And so really being able to think about, giving yourself that time to create those new behaviors and meeting your goals will be helpful. Small goals may not result in huge, quick results. You remind yourself that large changes usually don't stick. Small changes made over time will equate to long-term change behaviors and long-term results. All right, so that's all the information I had for you. I'm so happy that I stayed on time. So we have upcoming webinars. So like I said, Megan Niels is doing stress levels and weight gain on May 24th from noon to 1. We will record all of these and send them out for people that can't join live. I'm going to be doing a webinar on macros, micros, and phytonutrients. Also, Casey's going to be doing exercise, how to create behaviors that last a lifetime. Lindy will be doing our last 2 webinars about fiber and then how to transition from a weight loss program to a weight maintenance program. So really great topics overall between now and the end of our challenge. And so if you know anybody that's doing the challenge, I highly encourage you to, remind them to listen in on these webinars. Our main concern doing this weight loss challenge is that we didn't want this to be let's encourage employees to just drop weight really quickly and then that's that. We wanted to make sure that employees were not only, thinking about weight loss, but thinking about how to maintain the weight loss long term, thinking about how to change lifestyle patterns, lifestyle behaviors that will just benefit their health and wellness in the long term. And then also keep in mind that, like I said, Lindy and I are doing some coaching for individuals who are doing the challenge. And so if you are wanting to work with us at all, please just let me know. I realized that I forgot to complete this slide. So anyways, just shoot us an email. Sorry, Lindy, I forgot to include all your info, but just shoot us an email and we would be happy to work with you. And we can do telehealth or we can do in-person coaching. And so we can find a time to do that. All right, well, that is all I have. I am going to stop sharing my screen. And if anyone has any questions, we have 4 minutes. If you guys need to jump off and get back to work, you are absolutely welcome to do so. But if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm happy to take any questions. All right, you guys are letting me off easy. All right, well, I'm going to stop recording.